Direct from the television studios in the Edward R. Murrow Communications Center at Washington State University, the official dedication of a U.S. postage stamp honoring Edward R. Murrow. The U.S. Postal Service selected Pullman and Washington State University for the dedication today because this is where Edward R. Murrow went to school, where he took classes in speech and radio broadcasting and worked at the university radio station. From here, Murrow went on to his award-winning career with CBS radio and television. Today, broadcasters still credit Edward R. Murrow with charting the course, setting the standards for broadcast journalism.
To the Edward R. Murrow Stamp Dedication Ceremony. My name is Jeannette Price. Excuse me. I'm the postmaster here in Pullman. Today we have people visiting here from near and far. We are honored to have you with us this morning. This is a unique occasion for the City of Pullman, Washington State University, and the United States Postal Service, as we recognize an American who in his career established the standards for broadcast news, Edward R. Murrow. Would you please stand for the presentation of the colors by Washington State University, Army ROTC, and the playing of the national anthem by the Washington State University Brass Quintet.
Present. Order. About face.
You may be seated. Thank you again, Washington State University, Army ROTC, and Brass Quintet. I'd like to mention that Edward R. Murrow excelled in the military sciences, and he became commander of the university's Army ROTC Brigade. It is now my pleasure to introduce our honored guests in the audience. Her Majesty's Consulate Stephen Turner, Patricia Gregg, District Assistant, Office of Speaker of the House, Tom Foley. Dan Kirshner, Eastern Washington Director, Office of U.S. Senator Slade Gordon. Cindy McRoberts from the Regional Office of U.S. Senator Patty Murray. Ann Sperber, author. Dave Herrera, United States Postal Service, Customer Services, Denver, Colorado. Ernest Williams, Manager, Post Office Operations, Spokane, Washington. Jim McDowell, Customer Services, Denver, Colorado, Postal Service. And John Harden, Manager, Post Office Operations, Spokane, Washington. Our District Manager of Customer Services and Sales of Spokane District, Linda T. Wilson. I will introduce the individuals on the stage later. I would like to introduce, with great pleasure, the President of Washington State University, Samuel Smith.
Thank you very much, Postmaster Price. I want to add my thank you to our honored guests and the distinguished officials taking part in this occasion today where we honor one of Washington State University's most distinguished graduates, Edward R. Murrow. This communications center that you're in today is named for Ed Murrow, and the School of Communications in which it is housed is also bearing his name. Ed Murrow is the epitome of an individual benefiting from access to a quality WSU education and from the special student experience made possible in a major part by the extraordinary efforts of one WSU speech teacher, Ida Lou Anderson. Professor Anderson's influence on Ed Murrow's life, as he said, was dramatic, both in his personal aspirations and his speaking style. Nothing could be more fitting and proper than a U.S. commemorative postage stamp being issued honoring Edward R. Murrow, a broadcast journalist whose high standards continue today to make the standard to which we will all strive. Thank you for being here, and I'll turn this back over to Postmaster Price. Thank you.
Thank you, President Smith. To dedicate the Edward R. Murrow stamp, it is my honor to introduce Chief Operating Officer and Executive Vice President, United States Postal Service, Joseph Caraveo from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Jeanette, and good morning. Since the Postal Service issued its first commemorative stamp in 1893, stamps have celebrated hundreds of important themes. We've issued stamps to commemorate the milestones, the fundamental principles, and the extraordinary people and achievements that shaped this country. Today we honor a man who is part of our history and at the same time, for many of us, a part of our living memory. Some of us remember Edward R. Murrow as a deep voice coming from a tabletop radio. Many of us can also recall seeing him on television on a screen about the size of a video cassette, when screens that size were considered big. Others in this audience know him only from kinescopes of his most famous documentaries. To all of us, however, Edward R. Murrow stands for what is best about broadcasting: the immediacy that lets us share events as they are happening, and thoughtful commentary that adds perspective without coloring our view. He brought the professionalism of news reporting to a medium that many of his colleagues felt could never go beyond entertainment value. He was well aware that the pressures to create visual interest could overpower the words and distort the meaning of unfolding events. He persevered because he saw the promise of television news and what it could be if it were done right. On Monday, this past week, we saw it done right. Television first brought us the news of the Los Angeles earthquake, then it stayed with the story throughout the day to provide the human dimensions in the tradition of Edward R. Murrow. This tradition is his legacy to all Americans, and it cannot be overvalued. We are here to honor Edward R. Murrow as the first broadcaster to appear on a U.S. stamp. He will now join the distinguished company of journalists Walter Lippmann, Ernie Pyle, William Allen White, Horace Greeley, Adolph Oakes, and Joseph Pulitzer. Beginning tomorrow, the stamp will go on sale in post offices across the country, and his name and face will begin appearing on messages sent within this nation and around the world. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Samuel Smith and Edward Bliss to please join me in undraping the design of the Edward R. Murrow stamp. Gentlemen? You just hold it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Caraveo. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Helen Murrow Best of Spokane, representing the Murrow family, including Mrs. Jeannette Murrow and their son Casey. Casey's from Vermont. Mrs. Jeannette, Mrs.
President Smith, members of the United States Postal Service, and guests, I'm very pleased to be here today to represent the family. I want to tell you that both Aunt Janet and Casey were sorry not to be able to be here. I was asked to say a few words about the family as a family. We're a very small family. There were 3 Murrow boys, Lacey, Dewey, and Ed, whose original name, as many of you may or may not know, was Egbert. My grandmother Murrow told my mother at one point that had she realized that Egbert was not a very nice-looking name, she would never have named him that. My father was the middle boy, Dewey. All 3 of the boys went to WSU. Uncle Ed was always a very integral part of our family. When my father was in college, he decided to go gold prospecting in South America. And while he was gone, my Uncle Ed squired my mother, who was my father's fiancée at that time, to all the Kappa Sigs and Zeta Tau Alpha functions and many of the other functions on the campus. And he always had a very special spot in his heart for my mother. My mother's name is Donna Jean, but he always called her Jean. When he came home from England during the war several times, we did get to see him. When he would come home on speaking tours, one particular time the whole family met at the Olympic in Seattle. And we had our pictures taken, which is the only one that I know of with the whole family there except for my Uncle Lacey. He was a very generous man to my sister and to me. As I said, we're a very small family. My grandparents, his parents, lived in Bellingham, so he was here very often, made the effort to come out and see us all. And after the war, Aunt Janet and Casey came very often in the summers, and Uncle Ed as often as he could. When we were at the Olympics, my grandmother, who was a very poor eater, said to my Uncle Ed, "Sonny, how much did you pay for this dinner?" She was a Southern lady from North Carolina. And he said, well, Mother, it isn't important. But I suppose either my sister or I decided we would tell her. And when we told her, she ate every bite of her dinner. We realized, I suppose, early on that he was a famous man. But I must say, to us, he was always just Uncle Ed. He was very generous to us, always seemed to bring us something when he came. We used to tease my father because in the Edison High School alumni book, he was 2 years ahead of Uncle Ed in school. And my father willed his speaking ability to his younger brother, Ed. And my sister and I thought that was a pretty dumb thing to do. We did appreciate him as a person, I think probably more as a famous person. And I can tell you he was very, very much a part of our family. And we think of him often, and we're very close to Aunt Janet and Uncle Ed. And I thank you very much for asking me this morning.
Thank you, Mrs. Best. Edward R. Murrow had a wonderful experience as a student at this great university. Today, WSU students continue to enjoy what he enjoyed, an education brought to them through dedicated faculty and staff, which prepares them for the challenges that lie ahead. Now I'm pleased to introduce WSU broadcast student Pamela Dickson of Vancouver, British Columbia.
Thank you. He stood alone in a darkened part of the world, and with his words, there was light. His message illuminated a country wrought with war, bombing, destruction, and eternal night. There were no limitations on his courage, no demand too great in his quest to link continents, neighbors in the light of knowledge. He touched the interests of millions, and in his words, put every listener within whispering distance of his lips. Whether from the Maginot Line or the burnt-out shells of London, he would broadcast. And in this country, he would break the manacles of injustice and bring new light to a changing and often chaotic world. And all of this in his legacy to us at his alma mater, Washington State University. There is no student of communication here whose life has not been affected by Edward R. Murrow. And yet it is a different world we face today. Indeed, the spark has ignited global communication technology that has linked us as a world community. But it is not technology that we inherited from Edward R. Murrow. His was the kind of journalism to which we aspire. A champion of truth and fairness, his words spoke volumes. The quality of the story, balanced, accurate, fair. His interest was in the responsible practice of his craft and in the battle against ignorance, intolerance, and indifference. These are qualities no technology could manufacture. It is to these ends we strive as we go out into a rapid, evolving society, to endeavor to face challenge with integrity, to share the stories of those who speak with the softest voices, to question those whose voices command attention. We hope to continue the Murrow tradition to light a fire of change and hope where there is darkness. A large and often overwhelming world awaits us, a world where there is little certainty in the job market, our chosen professions, but we have learned that there is always a place for determination. And in Murrow's words, we do not live alone. We have spent time in this place understanding what it means to be a part of the Murrow tradition. And sometimes, late on a Friday afternoon or before dawn one morning, at the Evergreen, at the radio station, in the group meeting, in the edit suite, we've almost heard the echo of those who have gone before. Silent footsteps in the hallways, Professors, staff, students, administrators, people who have made the Murrow tradition something very real, something tangible. They have left the light on always and deep into the night to ensure that the legacy is continued. And for their guidance, we are forever grateful. It is an honor to represent my fellow students today in celebration of the dedication of the Edward R. Murrow postage stamp. We welcome the challenges that lie ahead and go forward from this place armed with the tools we need to bring a new light to the darkness and to carry on the Murrow tradition. Perhaps our responsibility to journalism is best described in Murrow's own words as he addressed the graduating class of 1962 right here at Washington State. Our young men and women must not be too discouraged at the mess of unpalatable porridge that the older generation may have left them. I suggest that we have at least demonstrated that courage lives on. We will have restored the belief that faith and loyalty can lift common men to greatness, and upon this, youth will build. And they will build it well, for in fact, they have no other choice. We are all going now to seek our great perhaps. And as we seek our own perhaps, may we develop into the kind of professionals of whom Edward R. Murrow would be proud. Champions of justice, bearers of truth, good people, Cougars. Thank you.
Pamela, thank you very much. It is now my pleasure to introduce Robert Reisner, United States Postal Service Vice President of Technology and Applications from Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much, Postmaster Price, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to speak very briefly, but I wanted to make 2 points here today. I'm very pleased to be here for both a personal as well as a professional reason. On the personal side, 30 years ago this fall, Casey Murrow, Edward R. Murrow's son, and I became friends when we both entered college as freshmen and shared a world history class. It was a small class, and you can imagine what an extraordinary and insightful contribution could be made by someone who had grown up with Casey's father. From a professional point of view, though, this is a very important event as well. My job with the Postal Service is Vice President for Technology Applications. It's a newly created job, and my job is to explore and to help develop new technologies into services that we hope are going to be important to our customers, but also are part of creating the information superhighway that is getting a great deal of attention in Washington and throughout the country. Well, as we create this information superhighway, you can see that my feeling as a representative of the next generation that it's important to hearken back to a man of integrity and a man who represented value in broadcast journalism. I too wanted to share some of his words with you today, because it's in these words that perhaps we can anchor our new construction, our new superhighway, in a sense of integrity in journalism. In 1958, in speaking to the radio and TV news directors, Edward R. Murrow gave one of his most famous speeches in which he talked about television. He said, "If this instrument is good for nothing but to entertain, amuse, and insulate, then the tube is flickering now, and we will soon see that the struggle is lost. This instrument can teach, it can illuminate, yes, and even it can inspire, but it can do so only to the extent that humans are determined to use it to those ends. Otherwise, it's nothing but wires and lights in a box." Edward R. Murrow was a man who understood that these technologies are far more than technical matters, that they have to do with the core of our American tradition. So we from the Postal Service are very pleased to be here today to dedicate this stamp in his honor and in his tradition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reisner. There is no doubt that the work and achievements of Edward R. Murrow, both as a student and as a broadcasting professional, continues to live today. Speaking about the Murrow tradition is the president of Washington State University Board of Regents, William Wiley.
Thank you very much. Like millions of other Americans who were old enough to remember World War II, I remember hearing Ed Murrow broadcasting the news from London during the Blitz. I remember hearing him talk about how Patton was moving this way or that way. For a time in my life, his radio broadcasts were as much a part of my childhood as some of you will remember weekly radio episodes of The Lone Ranger and The Green Hornet. My memories of Ed Murrow give me a personal interest and a fond recollection from my childhood days. And as president of the Board of Regents and as a representative of that body, I want to thank the U.S. Postal Service and all of those responsible for making the Edward R. Murrow commemorative 29-cent postage stamp possible. It is, or it was, here on this campus, on the WSU campus, that Ed Murrow began to prepare for his career. So it seems appropriate that we commemorate this achievement here at the birth of his genius. This afternoon, we're fortunate to have, or this morning, as the case may be, we're fortunate to have someone with us who knew Ed Murrow perhaps better than anyone else. Edward Bliss, Jr. joined the Columbia Broadcasting System in 1943 and was Mr. Murrow's writer-producer from 1955 to 1961. Later, he was Walter Cronkite's editor. And after leaving CBS, he founded the broadcast journalism program at American University in Washington, D.C. He retired as professor emeritus in 1987. Mr. Bliss edited the book In Search of Light. And the importance of this is that the broadcasts of Edward R. Murrow, 1938 to 1961, were included. And he has won numerous honors as a result of his deeds. Just last year, Mr. Bliss received the Paul White Award from the Radio Television Directors Association of America. Mr. Bliss and his wife Lois have traveled here from Alexandria, Virginia, and we are just absolutely delighted to have you here. Please help us to welcome Ed Bliss, Jr. Thank you. Ed is going to talk to us about our subject for the day, Edward R. Murrow, his meaning today. Mr. Bliss.
I feel today, as I stand here, that I have come to the end of a pilgrimage. In 1981, I journeyed down to Polecat Creek, North Carolina, to the log house where Ed Murrow was born. I asked to see the room where his voice, a lusty one, they say, was first heard. The lady of the house led me up a flight of narrow stairs to a small, low-ceilinged room where it happened. And I looked and thought a lot and went quietly back downstairs. In 1975, I went to London and walked over to Broadcasting House, where Murrow worked during the Battle of Britain, where in the words of Archibald MacLeish, Murrow, through his language, laid the dead of London at our doors. I stood by the bomb-pitted church across the street and looked up at the roof of Broadcasting House and tried to picture Murrow up there looking out over the beleaguered city, reporting to America what it was like. I walked down Hallam Street, where Ed and Janet had lived, and thought of Ed and his colleague Larry LeSueur, who, when the bombs fell, lay together in the gutter because there was nowhere else to hide. And now finally, I have come here to this campus where Murrow was educated and discovered his strengths. It is remarkable how what he did here prepared him for his success, for his career. He acted in campus productions, and broadcasters projecting the news for their audiences must perform. He took a lead in campus politics, and for someone who would cover politics, this provided precious insights. As a member of the ROTC, he studied military science, helpful to a war correspondent. He broadcast over the student station at a time when other schools provided no such opportunity. And he studied speech. His teacher was a young woman crippled by polio who gave him both skill and inspiration. Her name was Ida Lou Anderson, and as you know, it was she who gave Murrow his trademark. The pause after the word this, as in, this is London, and this is the news. Only his good night and good luck could compete. After Miss Anderson died, she was just 40. Her former students wrote about what she had meant to them, and their writings were put together in a little book that would serve as a kind of memorial to her. Murrow said in his eulogy, for that's what it was, that she was not a perfectionist, that she was content to cause the student to do just a little better than he thought himself capable of doing. The margin between mediocrity and the mastery of the spoken word, he said, was measured in terms of her confidence, example, and inspiration. She demanded not excellence so much as integrity. And there was the informal education he received here in the state of Washington. I have a hunch that Murrow, working with timber crews in your forests, came to appreciate the worth of the common man, which is a tremendous lesson, for it affects how we think and what we do the rest of our lives. All his life, Murrow defended the common citizen, who without power and influence required defense, a characteristic so visible in the McCarthy years. I would quote Mary Adams, who was in charge of talks at the BBC. The thing about Murrow, she said, was that he had a set of values which persisted. When she was asked what set of values, she answered with two words. Murrow said, people mattered. With Murrow, they mattered. I won't review the career of this man. You know his achievements and his disappointments. I have a thought I'm sorry for, but will share with you. I have found myself saying I'm glad that Murrow is not alive, to be disappointed by what is happening in the medium in which he accomplished so much, and which today holds so much unfulfilled promise Glad that he has not lived to see the talk shows that have become sideshows and the invasion of so much celebrity news into the evening news. That he has not seen the disappearance of commentary from the evening news and the decline of the documentary in which he held such high hopes. Glad that he has not seen programs like Hard Copy or heard the obscenities of Howard Stern. The fact that Stern's radio program is popular and his book, a bestseller, recalls Murrow's judgment that the fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves. It was Murrow's abiding belief, his conviction, that democracy requires an informed electorate, an electorate informed on issues vital to the health of our society, to the peace of the world, issues so much more important than what happens to the Bobbitts, to the Menendez brothers, to Heidi Feist. I don't think he would overlook those stories. I think he would say, in the name of good journalism, don't lead with them. Don't give them so much space, so much time. There are other stories much more important. Murrow opposed the debasement of news, believing that the first duty of a reporter was to enlighten, to shed light. He believed in priorities, that what the public needs to know should come first. A hero of his was Thomas Jefferson. He bought what Jefferson said. An informed democracy is the only kind there is. There is an immortality about the name of Murrow, illustrated by how often and by how many it is mentioned. Today, you see and hear his name invoked, not only by media critics and professors of journalism, but by broadcasters, historians, biographers, novelists, cartoonists, even actors, as you hear a character on Murphy Brown speak against a key to speak. I'll go back. So you hear a character on Murphy Brown speak up against a piece of cheap journalism on grounds that it is something Edward R. Murrow would never do. And you see a cartoon syndicated nationwide showing a television anchorman saying, Edward R. Murrow, wherever you are, forgive us. There is an unfading quality about the name of Murrow, illustrated by this handsome postage stamp dedicated today, illustrated too by the Edward R. Murrow School of Communication, by the small park named for him in the nation's capital, and the high school bearing his name in Brooklyn. Many awards are made in his name, including those offered annually by the Radio and Television News Directors Association, reminding radio and television stations of Murrow's standards, that he represented the best, and that high standards are the goal, which is Murrow's meaning, and which would impress him and please him most. The people in broadcasting remember Murrow and know what his message is. In a recent speech, Dan Rather said, "We toil and are unhappy in this craft because of the way Ed Murrow brought it into being. We can share his courage, or we continue to work, or we can continue to work in complacency and fear." I remember a speech that Robert McNeil made, and how he quoted Murrow over and over again, ending with the one in which Murrow said he was seized by an abiding fear regarding what these two instruments, radio and television, are doing to our society, our culture, and our heritage. Murrow spoke often of being worthy of our heritage. Much of this immortality, this relevance, this meaning of Murrow's words today derives from the courageous speech he made 36 years ago when he stood up in the grand ballroom of the Blackstone Hotel in Chicago and, addressing the nation's radio and television news directors, challenged leaders of the industry to live up to their responsibility, to cast off their timidity and stop insulating the public from what he called the hard and demanding realities which we must face if we are to survive. No speech ever delivered, indeed no book, article, or editorial on the subject looms as large, is quoted so often as this speech of Murrow's, summoning the industry to match its power with responsibility. Terry Anderson has said, "I believe courage is when you have a choice and make the hard one." Murrow made the hard one that night. That's the big picture. Let me give you a little picture. One journalist, Bob Edwards of National Public Radio, who works with a photograph of Murrow over his desk. I like something Edwards, who says he was inspired by Murrow, once said. He said it very simply. Journalism, he said, is about telling the truth. That is what Murrow believed, what he searched for, and that is his message.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bliss. Now I would like to welcome Mr. Caraveo back to the podium.
As we draw to a conclusion in this program, I certainly want to again thank Washington State University for the excellent setting and for having this event and sharing it with the Postal Service. I also at this time would like to present a souvenir of today's ceremony to our special guests. First, I have a framed reproduction of the Edward R. Murrow stamp that I would like President Smith to take. Thank you very much. And now I have some other albums that I would like to present to the people who helped make this such a memorable event. The first one, by tradition, goes to the President of the United States, and Mr. Clinton's album will be delivered to him at the White House. So I'll put this one aside. For those stirring remarks, Edward Bliss. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And of course, representing the family, Helen Murrow Best. Thank you. Our President of the Regents, Dr. Wiley. Dr. Smith, something for yourself. Thank you. For that excellent presentation, and I'm sure all of you are very proud of Pamela Dickson for the Bob Reisner, something for your own collection. And for doing such a great job hosting the event, and our speaker, Jeannette Price. Thank you very much for your attention and for your time, and this concludes our program.
Thank you, Mr. Caraveo. This concludes the official ceremony, and I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. In the adjacent studio, there will be refreshments to which you are all invited. In addition, the Edward R. Murrow stamp will be sold, and it will be canceled there for you in Studio A. Washington State University's souvenir cachet envelopes are also on sale there. The stamps may be canceled first day issue here in the studio next door and at the main post office. The stage party will be available for autographs following the being escorted off the stage. Mr. Bert Harrison, the author of Washington State on the Air, will have his book on sale next door also. Would you please remain in your seats, those who are seated, until the stage party is escorted off, and then you can come next door with everyone.
This is Tom Foley. Our nation has been blessed with men and women of special character, whose professionalism and courage set a standard of excellence that live on long after they have gone. Edward R. Murrow's legendary career as a broadcast journalist and his abiding concern for the preservation of journalistic integrity, from the battlefields of Europe to the halls of Congress, became the ethical standard of his profession. Edward R. Murrow was a Washington State hero. He grew up in Skagit County. His father was a logger, and he spent his summers and school vacations on logging crews and spent a year on a timber cruiser on the Olympic Peninsula. His values and integrity came from hard work and an especially good education at Washington State University. We are honored that the United States Postal Service has issued a commemorative stamp honoring Edward R. Murrow for the standard of excellence he brought to his profession and gave to the American people. In so doing, the Postal Service is honoring all of us from the state of Washington.